Roundtable, our premier key event this morning. And this is your chance to actually hear from the guys on the front line, the people that are out there making these tough decisions every day to make sure that customers and consumers have choices. So I think what I'll do and get into this just directly. Let me, in alphabetical order, just introduce everybody and give a little sentence about, and just come on up and sit down, and when we finish the introductions, we'll just get started, okay? So in alphabetical order, joining us this morning, we have Marcelo Claure, and he's CEO of Sprint, also a CCA Pinnacle sponsor. Marcelo joined Sprint in 2014 after serving on the board of directors. Prior to Sprint, Marcelo was CEO of Brightstar, a company founded in 1997 and grew from a small Miami-based company to a distributor of global business of a $10 billion business. Pretty impressive. Thank you. Welcome. Our second panelist is Rodney Dir. Rodney is President and CEO of nTelos Wireless. CEO and President of Spectrum Bridge, Inc. And COO of Firethorn Holdings, LLC. His experience expands more than 20 years in the wireless industry in leadership roles. And then we're also pleased to have us join us with Jonathan Foxman. Jonathan Foxman is President and CEO of Cellular One, also CCA's Chairman of the Board this year. And Jonathan co-founded Cellular One in 2005, has served as President and CEO since that time. Jonathan? Previously, he served as CEO for Highland Cellular and also served nearly 20 years in the wireless industry in leadership positions. And rounding out our panel, we are very pleased to have Mr. Ron Smith, President and CEO of Bluegrass Cellular, former chairman of our board and current board member. Ron has served in the Bluegrass role since 1991. Ron, thank you, sir. During his time running the company, he's overseen the startup of the wireless company, Bluegrass Wireless, as well as Bluegrass Network, operates as an ISP and fiber optics telecom network carrier. Also Bluegrass Telecom, which serves as a long-distance service provider. So we've got the heavyweights up here, so why don't we get started on a panel discussion, okay?
Oh,
yes.
Turn us all on.
Do we have to turn on?
Okay, am I good to go? All right. I get the dreaded questions out here. Yeah. I thought what we'd do is we'd go through a couple of questions and then we'll do a little fast round. We'll get a bunch of issues out of the way. But the first is, the theme of the show is thinking locally, connecting globally, and competing with the duopoly in this world. Just thought we'd start out with how does hyperlocal content and presence, what's it do for you in the marketplace? How do you compete with the duopoly? And what differentiates your company in the marketplace? And Jonathan, you're the chairman of the board. Let's give you the difference of kicking it off.
All right, thanks, Steve. The way we think about our business and competition is really a stratification. So at the base level, they're what we call the credibility issues, the threshold issues that are really important to us, but we're not going to ultimately win and dominate in our market based on them, right? We've got to have the coverage that's as good as the competition. We've got to have the network services and the capabilities in the network, those sort of basics. And we compete primarily with AT&T and Verizon, and certainly there are battles we win and places that we serve better than they do. But from a strategy point of view, we can't think of that as, oh, that's how we're going to dominate them. But we've got to get there. After that, it's really about differentiation. So that's the second part for us. And we think a lot in terms of local differentiation. That's the one thing that we can do better. So to answer your question, it makes a big difference for us. A big part of our ability to compete and be successful is that differentiation, which we do in a lot of different ways. We have some applications to reach our customers that provide local information, news about local sports, some things that let them configure what interests them, that creates that connection, and as well just the presence in the community. There's nothing that's more powerful than having stores in the smaller communities with faces that people know and the customers get to have a relationship with and feel comfortable with.
Rodney, just keep going down.
Yeah, we kind of look at it as two different challenges. First of all, connecting globally is as much an aspiration as an ongoing everyday challenge, because it's critical for us not only to serve in the network that we operate, but through our partnerships and our relationships, trying to figure out ways that we can have interoperability and be able to provide that same service locally, nationwide, and even on a global level. So it's something we work continuously. We've got some great partnerships, particularly with Sprint, on our network challenges and more importantly, our network strategy. So that's something we work to and we're constantly trying to refine. So we can provide that same service locally we do globally. I think very similar to Jonathan, on a local level, it's thinking locally means to us is really being involved in the communities we serve. And we think it is an advantage against particularly the big two and how we compete against them. It's important that our employees wear our brand as a badge of honor. And in doing so, there's a great deal of pride that's built up in the services that we provide, and that it kind of extends whether they're out shopping, they're at a local church, or they're in the community and involved. And we think that's the biggest marketing that we have and our biggest asset is our employees. One of the key changes we've made recently has been to really push that accountability and responsibility down to the market level and down to the community level. Give them more autonomy to do some things and get involved in the communities and not dictate from a headquarters level. And I think that's giving them a little bit more responsibility and accountability.
Oh, thanks. Marcelo, you too are a challenger, so your thoughts on...
Yep, well, first, thanks for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here, and last night I was in San Francisco, and I was having dinner with Massa around 9:30, 10 p.m., and he told me, make sure you fly and don't be late, and make sure you come through in everything I committed a year ago. So we started reviewing notes, and so I have a mandate to make sure that not only my goal is to come through in what he committed, but we got to up the ante, and we got to make things better. So I've been the CEO of Sprint now for 7 months, and it's been a fascinating experience to learn how to compete against some pretty tough competitors. And I think one of the things we've learned is, you cannot take any corners. There's no silver bullet. You need to have a great network. Network is what we're all about. So we have to make sure that we leverage our spectrum and make sure that we continuously build a great network in order to be able to offer what I call the new products that will come in the next few years. Secondly, is you got to have a great value proposition. And I think we're working hard at Sprint in terms of how can we differentiate ourselves, what can we bring to the customers. 3 is distribution. And I think this is where the local carriers are always going to win. You know where to place those stores. You know who the local people are. You know how to be involved in community relations. To us, what's important, if everything works out, we're going to increase our distribution to many more thousands of points of sale if the Radio Shack transaction gets approved today. And then lastly is products. And the consumer today looks at products as a very important determination when they're going to decide which carriers they're going to choose. And that's why I think it's really important, the initiatives that we have in terms of everybody should be launching the iPhone on the same day, everybody should be launching the new Galaxy on the same day, and soon everybody should be launching other innovative products in the same day. So I think those are the basics in order to compete. We've tried to change things around. We were the first ones to introduce a leasing product, and leasing gives you the ability to offer a consumer the same product at about half the price. And consumers do care about saving money. And those are the type of things that we want to discuss to figure out the new things that we're launching, how can everybody be part of it. But at the same time, from our end, from Sprint, we also have a lot to learn as it relates to, how can Sprint feel a lot more local as we're a national carrier competing with AT&T and Verizon in the major cities. I think there's a lot that we can learn from you guys in terms of how do you compete in other markets. So I think those are the 4 basic things that at least we use at a Sprint in order to continue to grow.
Thank you. Now, Ron, you built, you are Mr. Bluegrass, you're Mr. Kentucky.
I'm something.
and you've found some effective ways to compete.
Well, I think, John and Rod and Marcelo have all sort of addressed the issue. I guess the only thing I would add is the age-old joke in wireless was that the only difference between a used car salesman and a cellular salesman is that the used car salesman knew when he was lying. The complexity of the services that we offer make it difficult to make sure that our customers really understand. I mean, the issues of transparency and trust are what are really critical. And for us, it really came down to a mantra of treating our customers like best friends. You know, as if they were a friend that needed to trust you, so that when you said something, it was true. When you said you were going to deliver something, you did it. And that, I think, is how we try to compete. We make sure that we're not out there saying something we don't understand how it works. And if we don't understand how it works, you know, we let them know and we move forward.
Honesty is pretty good. Transparent and honest is pretty good. Why don't we do a sort of a faster round? Just try to get a yes or no and on 3 or 4 questions, and we can get some of these issues sort of stacked out, and then we get into some more interesting debates on some of these policy issues. 600 megahertz incentive auction, as you know, it's no doubt it's a huge auction coming up. Biggest issues at the FCC right now, at least one of the biggest. Are you going to participate? Just yes or no, or comments? You're going to participate in the 600 megahertz auction?
To us, to be determined. I mean, we got to look at the rules, and we have to make sure that it's appropriate. We have a lot of spectrum, so we have to figure out what is going to be our position, and you know, we're looking with our eyes wide open. We agree that this will probably be the last opportunity in our age time to see another auction of low band spectrum. So we're going to look at it, and hopefully the rules of the FCC are going to be ones that will allow us to participate. And I know this is a yes, no, but I look at this is an incredible opportunity for us to lobby together to potentially form a coalition to go at this spectrum together. Because I think the great thing in Sprint and the partnership with CCA or with different carriers is you're at a place in most of the cases where we have no intention of going, and you have no intention of coming to where we are. So I think we'll have a much better chance of doing stuff together if the FCC will allow joint bidding and other, that today the FCC has said that they have no intention. So that's a very important part for us.
Right.
Yeah, we're very interested in the auctions and would love to participate, and we're evaluating the investment. I think with the big two, with the type of low-band spectrum assets they have, we need that to compete. I think it's critical, so we need to figure out a way to participate. So we're looking seriously at it.
Jonathan?
Yeah, that's our intention. Right now, we're very positively inclined. Obviously, the rules matter, the timing matters, the pricing, and therefore the access to capital is obviously pretty relevant. But we're a low-band provider today, so we appreciate the value of that spectrum.
Ron?
I hope so. I think after what we learned in the AWS-3 auction, there are some major concerns that were raised in both the rules and the process that will make it very difficult for anyone Tier 3 and below to win if we continue on the same process that we had with AWS-3. And so I think that there are some significant issues before the FCC that have to be addressed in order for us to participate. We'd love to, but if you make the rules in such a case that I can't actually compete, then why bother?
Yeah, that was my next question. What do we learn on the AWS-3 auction? And you've addressed some of that. Well, let's just keep coming down the row here. And any other lessons learned on AWS-3, Jonathan, in your mind?
Well, just to echo what Ron said. The rules have to be such that we've got a fair shot, because that's exactly right. We all run small businesses. There's a lot to do, a lot to focus on, and a lot of uses for capital. It's got to be a productive exercise where we think we've got a good chance of being successful. Because the time frame, you think about what it takes to intend to go into an auction, and then do something with it. There's a lot that would go on hold intending to follow that strategy. And if you don't have real confidence that you can be successful, a lot of time's gone by, and that can be a bad thing.
Yeah, we were just surprised by the level of interest. I think there was a tremendous amount of pent-up demand for spectrum at low-band spectrum that we were just took us by surprise.
Same, Marcelo.
We're very nicely surprised. As you know, we hold a lot of 2.5 spectrum, and seeing the prices of 1.9 to where they went, and knowing that technology today allows, 1.9 is very similar to 2.5 today when you do carrier aggregation, when you do TDD, FDD carrier aggregation. So we were very positively surprised at the prices that were being paid for high band spectrum.
And it didn't hurt having some spectrum that now seems to be valued higher than what it was before the AWS spectrum auction, right?
But Steve, you have to really question whether or not those prices were inflated and whether or not those values are really real. And I think that's the concern as we look forward is there's now an expectation set in the marketplace for the broadcasters that they think they're going to get the type of levels that they got with AWS 3, and we don't know that that's going to occur. So I think, if you set a bar too high, then it's going to be extremely difficult when that bar is so high that it just takes out the lower end of the market in terms of the competitors that could bid. When we look at what the AWS 3 valuations were at 600 megahertz, that's a difficult play for a very small carrier. And I think I think there are a number of lessons we need to review on AWS 3 before we start assuming that we're going to have the same experience at the 600 megahertz. It's a complex forward, reverse auction with a lot of issues in terms of where the supply is going to come from, and which is going to be very geographic in nature. New York may have an entirely different type of band structure available as opposed to a Louisville, and much less. Right. And so when we get into those situations, I think we're really going to be asking the FCC to really look at this hard before they make some decisions.
Yeah, we had a session yesterday, and that the Preston Patton was here, from the broadcasters, and it was clear that he actually rose to the new level of the ability to be a purist in the sense that only money is the only thing that's driving the policy from the broadcasters. So, you think that there's probably inflation of the AWS numbers? And
I would, based on the news reports of the process, I would say that there's a good possibility we had some inflated numbers in there.
It'll be very hard to explain why not, right? I mean, if you're a broadcaster and you've seen that a lower quality spectrum went for the prices it went, I mean, how do you explain that, probably the best spectrum auction that has been done in many years, so that's potentially never going to happen again. How can that go at different prices? So I think it's going to be very complex, and you're absolutely right. And that's where I think partnering will make sense in terms of potentially tackling this together.
There was another player in the auction. I know that you might not want to address it, but Dish won a few megahertz in that auction, and they have a pretty. Does anybody want to suggest on even speculate on how Dish should maybe use some of their spectrum that they not only they bought but they currently have?
Well, I'd like to volunteer that we'd be happy to build out that spectrum for them in the regional markets.
Well, you have an ongoing test bed with.
We do. We've got a fixed wireless trial pilot going on right now. We've got about 650 customers using a fixed wireless solution, and it's working really well. We're learning a lot, and we're looking for opportunities to commercialize that, but I think we're a ways off from making that final decision, as well as Dish is too. I think.
And you're doing at band 38 with your low band?
With our low band, yeah.
Okay. And Sprint, you also have a trial going on with Dish, right?
We do, and it's an early stage trial. It's one in which I think is complementary to what Dish does in terms of offering additional services to the customers. We're basically wholesaling to Dish, and it's early, good results, customers are happy. So I would call all of these are just in early stages, pilots.
Okay. Ron?
I have no comment.
I think at the most basic level, we just love to see it put to use.
Yeah.
That spectrum will help the industry, it'll help drive competition, it'll help drive new services. Those are all things that are a benefit to those of us in the room. Beyond that, I think to echo what Rod said, building that out's a big challenge. There are a lot of companies in this room who are well positioned to help with that. I think we'd love to be part of a solution that helps drive that.
So I can call Mr. Ergen up and say, I think we have some ideas for you?
That's right.
Maybe? Okay. We'll
You
try
plant
that.
the seed.
Why don't we move on to one of the most significant issues, the most probably controversial debates we've had in the telecom world in some time. It's sort of sucked a lot of the oxygen out of the air in Washington, D.C. is net neutrality. Still trying to figure out exactly what net neutrality is, but I think everyone is. But let's talk about it just a little. I mean, the FCC recently voted a 3-2 vote for what they call a open internet. How will the Commission's actions impact your business? Or what do you think about the 3-2 vote and going forward under the Title II regime? Ron.
I actually wrote something down on this one because last night I was reading that the chairman was giving testimony before the House Judiciary Committee, and his comment was, no wonder Sprint, T-Mobile, Frontier, Google Fiber, along with hundreds of small rural phone companies and small competitive wireless carriers all say they can build businesses on Title II. Interesting. So I looked up the footnote of why he would say that small competitive wireless carriers believe that they can build businesses on Title II, and it's a letter from Steve that was published prior to reading the rules the day that the order came out. It said CCA supports an open internet for competitive carriers and consumers alike as long as the FCC allows network management flexibility and preserves universal service mechanisms. CCA will not object. CCA may not object, and I know that this was taken out of context, but I object. Title II is one thing, service regulation. When you look at what the order says, anything that potentially could be viewed by the Commission in their notion of what fair is, or what they believe the business model should be for wireless, they're going to control how services will be provided. So as you look at the rules, please be aware that everything that you do today is going to be reviewed by the Commission. Every new innovative service that we potentially would want to offer could be reviewed by the Commission. And someone anywhere can raise their hand and say, I'm being discriminated against. The rules basically are non-discrimination and general conduct, and that's all it's described at. So in essence, we have gone from it may not be rate regulation, I think it's relatively close, and maybe I would have rather had it, but I've got service regulation. I will have a very difficult time making sure that I don't cross any of those lines. And as a result, I think there's going to be a cooling hand on our wireless industry. People who normally would have been out there providing services, and there was an example last night, we were talking about LTE internet. LTE internet, by the way it works, could be potentially called upon and said, this is in violation of paid prioritization, which is said in the rules you can't do. But the only way you provide LTE internet technically is by putting off to one side, giving preferability to that type of technology. So I think we've gone into a situation with the FCC where they have defined mobile broadband as a telecom service. And that is a flight of fancy. There is no way that mobile broadband, regardless of how they want to use 300 pages of legal gymnastics, can define a broadband service other than an information service. So I don't know what the other carriers are, but when it comes down to making a decision about objecting to how the order has gone forward, I encourage you all to join me in objecting very strongly that Title II is not the way that wireless should be run. We don't want to be looking back at this and seeing that in February 26th, it was the day that mobility died.
And I feel like I should at least comment that there was a very measured statement that I gave him. As you say, it was. I knew that every word of that was going to be parsed eventually by more than one person, and it is very contentious issue. All those questions you have, I think, need to be answered. I don't know if we can successfully answer them under the current rules. But I do know that if we don't have some bipartisan unanimity of policy, to bring surety or certainty as we move forward, then we're in a very difficult situation as not only wireless carriers, but as
Well,
as
but it goes back to your question on the 3 to 2 vote. This was not a policy decision. This was a political decision. On November 10th, when the president did his video message saying, I believe that the open internet should be applicable to the strongest rules, including Title II, a change took place. I happened to be in the offices of the FCC the afternoon of November 10th and met with every office. And you can see that there was a shift going on as a result of the president's address. And I met with commissioner staffs that had, when you talk about this flight of fancy, I actually had a commissioner staff talk to me. We were there trying to encourage them to understand that reasonable network management meant that when you are trying to manage your network for quality of service, at times you have to throttle. It's not content throttling, but it's making sure that everybody in your network on that last mile, and that last piece of the cell site, and that wireless where you only lay out 10 megahertz, you need to be able to throttle that to make sure all people have good quality of service. And I got an eye roll, and someone said, well, the really only reason why you want to throttle is because you want to raise prices. I've been doing this for 28 years. I started Bluegrass 28 years ago, first employee. I've built analog networks, TDMA networks, CDMA networks. I've got 2 LTE networks. In no way in my life could I run a business if I chose to treat my customer that way. And the FCC doesn't seem to understand the reality of what it takes to run a business. They think that we're somehow out to get our customers when all we want is our customers to have a great experience and to be able to have all the services. And I'm sorry, but the net neutrality rule does nothing more than make this the most difficult way of providing a great service to the customer. The customer, the consumer, is going to be the hurt the most. Maybe not in the short term, but all the great flexible pricing, the flexible services, all those become questionable under the service management rules of the FCC under Title II.
I'm glad that
I will stop talking.
Yeah, I'm glad that you have
Passion.
with this. Now we know that this actually matters in Washington D.C. and out in Kentucky. So sorry. Well, let's go down the line real quick. And should Congress legislate?
Yeah, I think to a great extent, well, it's a symptom of a larger problem. Right? Uncertainty and partial solutions are always bad. They're problematic for business. They cause big political problems. There's a real issue, obviously, around net neutrality. That's why it was such a heated debate, not just between us and the FCC, but nationwide. There's a need for clarity on it. I agree partially with you, Ron. There's the potential for problems under Title II. There's the potential for any solution that doesn't provide real clarity. Mm-hmm. So I'm not a big fan of the idea of a telecom rewrite because it sort of tosses all the cards up in the air and bad things could come from that. There's a lot of good parts of the current laws. But we've got to get to the point where there's clarity and the process of being able to work through the issues. Like Ron said, it can't be an isolated political decision that's made in...
So maybe Congress should focus on net neutrality first so that we maybe get some direction on one of the most contentious issues we've had in years.
I think that'd be a much better idea.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree. I think clarity around what neutrality means and what the intent is before ever doing any policy making needs to happen. And I think that's the crux of the problem.
Marcelo?
Okay. So I probably became very unpopular to the industry as I became the first major operator to endorse net neutrality. And I'll tell you my logic behind that. I grew one of the most successful businesses, and I wanted the government as far away as possible from my business. But when I joined Sprint, and I started to understand who am I competing with, and unless there's light touch regulation who oversees AT&T and Verizon, they're going to drive us out of business. I mean, they control over 100% of the cash flow of the business, 100%. So if you add the cash flow of AT&T and Verizon compared to all the other carriers, it's more than 100%. And when I look at there's a reason why we want to do roaming agreements, right? You know, I cannot disclose how much we pay for roaming, but it's insane. The access that we pay, the special access. So we want some light touch regulation. We want somebody to oversee that the market powers basically are not going to drive us out of business. So the threats of, I'm not going to invest if you regulate this, I mean, nobody believes that. They run the two most profitable business in the world. There's no other carriers with the EBITDA margins that they have. So imposing, threatening the government, saying, if you pass regulation, I'm going to stop investing. That ain't going to happen. With the return on investment that they have, absolutely not. And I think, you know, I do believe that there needs to be some light regulation in our industry, at least to protect from a Sprint perspective. Now, what we want is we all want clarity. We all want to make sure that we're giving the right to manage our network. We think we're very fair to consumers. I think, you know, we're one of the few carriers that offers unlimited plans, and there are times of the day in which we have to manage our networks, in which we need to make sure that everybody has access to our networks. So as long as that's allowed, you know, I do welcome the government to oversee, you know, two very important areas, roaming and special access, that without overseeing them, these are our competitors, but they're the ones providing us the services. Well, guess what? Without some sort of overseeing, the prices will tend to go out of control, and they can pretty much regulate the profitability of Sprint.
Well, there's a lot of questions, a lot of answers that need to be sought after, and I can assure you we're going to be spending a lot of time in Washington, D.C. on this. Senator Thune today may force a vote on the budget, what they call the Budget Rama vote-a-thon that they're having. It's a non-binding resolution that would essentially say that the FCC should not essentially use their Title II authority to regulate. I don't know if they're going to offer it, but we're going to have test after test in the House and the Senate of where are the political winds blowing. And I think it's going to be an issue of debate and uncertainty and litigation for years to come. And personally, I would hope that the FCC and the Congress could find a solution that's best for America, not a partisan solution. We've got some work to do, and I think we have some strong advocates to work on the final solution.
But you need an open internet. You cannot allow people to regulate what content is going to go to. And with the power that certain carriers have, if this is not regulated, they will pretty much determine what content goes to who. And that's when we lose all relevance.
Right.
So you need to have a completely open internet where nobody has the power to determine what content goes to what consumer.
All right, why don't we move to the issue that we discussed just a minute, roaming. How important is roaming and effective roaming relationships and agreements to your business? And how important is it that you have roaming partners that can provide, quality services? And how important is it that the larger carriers have to connect with you or should connect with you?
Yeah. I'll speak to nTelos first. I mean, it's critical. It's really that first part about how do you connect nationwide and how do you connect globally. We can't do it without having access to spectrum, first of all, but more importantly, access to the network. So there's no way we could compete on a local level without having roaming, and they have to be at affordable rates. I mean, the issues that we see out there are the rates high. The rates are higher to us from the big two than they are to customers that they're providing local one-on-one service within the local market. It's a little bit insane. So it has to be regulated. The FCC has to step in and really help, because if not, we become less and less relevant to our consumers, and they're going to only have one option, and that's going to be the big two, and that's not in the best interest of the customer.
John?
Yeah, it was same idea in terms of its importance. The days of being able to operate and try to be successful with a local footprint or a regional footprint, that's gone. That can't happen anymore. You need to provide a nationwide service with nationwide rate plans, and that requires roaming, obviously. Coming the other way for our company, and I'm sure for a lot of others in the room, that out-collect revenue from inbound roaming is a critical source of our total revenue stream and our profitability, and that's obviously important too. And we need both. I think we've been fortunate because our roaming relationships are on terms that work for our business.
And just to add to that, I think not just voice roaming. I mean, we need 4G data roaming agreements. So you just don't get the box checked for having a roaming agreement on voice. It's got to be on
I should say 4G LTE and VoLTE.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that, by the way, too, sets up a little bit of an interesting issue, because in the net neutrality discussion, the issue of data roaming got kicked to the side. That, again, introduces some more uncertainty.
Right.
Yeah, right. And sort of, Ron, so we sort of like having a referee on the field. We just don't want the referee to blow the whistle on everything. It's a tough tough balancing act.
It's difficult to argue that the free market shouldn't determine rates, and if the market isn't free, and I think that what we've seen over the years is that the unbalance has occurred, and so it's not a free market. That there is too much economic power within a few that causes that to go off course. Then you do need a referee, but you need a referee in a way that doesn't require the heavy hand of regulation at the level I think that it has been proposed. I think we've seen a pendulum swing way to an extreme rather than a middle ground that historically we could have gotten to, that was getting close to until November 10th.
Why don't we move a little from this to see into a couple issues that actually where we have tried to help ourselves. Roaming hub and device hub, and again, you mentioned Masayoshi-san. I certainly send him our best, but I've got to say I've been extremely impressed with Marcelo's team, his continued vision, continued commitment to the principles and the guidelines that really struck this entire group a year ago when Masayoshi-san said I have a different way of thinking about partnering with the small carriers, and number one, I got to thank you for continuing with that effort. The untold amount of hours and effort and energy and treasure that's gone into getting us very close to a device hub and a roaming hub. And I told Marcelo before we got up here, is that this has never been done before. We have never done this, and I don't know of any place in the world that you've ever had a device hub and a roaming hub that allowed multiple smaller competitors an opportunity to compete but also connect in a nationwide or a global connection. So number one, thank you for that. And I would like to hear a little more about the device hub and the roaming hub. You mentioned a little of your philosophy before, but that's pretty impressive. I mean, the three things we wanted in the device hub was launch at the same time, launch with a nice variety of handsets, devices, and at price points that allow you to remain competitive. And I've been very pleased that has been the guiding principles in the discussions with Sprint Brightstar.
So let me start by saying that roaming is paramount to our success. I mean, we got to have the ability to roam in your networks. Today, I don't like writing hundreds of millions of dollars to my two big competitors. I would rather write that check to the rural carriers, and you got to make sure that you build your network. And I want to have a more open relationship in which we're sharing with you how we're building our networks, what are our specs, and we should expand this not only to buy handsets. As we buy equipment, we buy several billions of dollars of network equipment, and we should be buying them together to the same specs at the same prices. That's been done. Vodafone around the world does this. They procure on behalf of smaller carriers, and we should be able to do the same. And I'd love to eventually be able to put my map, the Sprint map, that will basically show as much coverage without the need to roam in with some other partners. that are currently my big competitors. Number one. Handsets, I think we're moving in the right direction. I don't think we've done enough. Every single time that there's a launch, we should all be launching on the same day. The smaller carriers should not be delayed. If you're delayed, it is so important for a consumer to get access to that new device. And if you don't have that device, an AT&T and Verizon handset, there were customers who are going to fly away, because that is one of the most happiest days in a customer's when they have access to that device. So I'm committed in terms of taking this and making sure that we together launch these devices. And I think in the future, it's not enough with devices. As we do deals with content providers, as we launch financial services, as we do mobile advertising, together, I think we have bigger procurement. I think we become more appealing to content companies if we say we're going to distribute you everywhere in the US. Not today that I have to select where I can distribute them, because certain places we have decided, that we're not going to build our network. And lastly, and I think this is a very important message, you've seen the value of spectrum. The value in the AWS was an eye-opening. There are many places where Sprint today is not going to build a network. We have our spectrum available, and we're wide open to develop new partnerships for companies who want to build utilizing our spectrum, because we want to make sure that we offer a seamless roaming experience. We want to be the national carrier that basically a combination of Sprint in combination with many of you guys. So I see this as handsets and roaming as the beginning, and you got to take baby steps, and then we're going to continue to do more things. So from a Sprint perspective, a complete, extending our hand to make this partnership even stronger.
Thank you. Thoughts, roaming?
Yeah, just
And devices. How are we going?
the device hub's been great. I think we've seen a renewed commitment from Sprint since Marcelo's come in the last 6-7 months, and we've made some great progress, particularly over the last 8 weeks. I think we've solved some real tough issues, and I think we're going to start to see this come to market. I would just reiterate, scale is so critical, and the device hub and the device concept is another opportunity for us as a local regional carrier to get that scale. So getting the costs down to where we can get access to the handsets, but also get it distributed to all of us in this room, I think at a cost that we are looking to get it at, will put us at a much better level playing field with the big two.
Let me switch real quick, because I want to give everyone a chance to identify their own issue.
Yeah.
And this is the one is, if you're king for a day, what would one thing you would change at the FCC?
Oh, you don't want to go there with me.
Okay.
It's just one thing, though.
Just one thing. Just one thing.
The one thing is, I wish that if I were the king.
King for a day.
Unfortunately, as I said, I think the current legacy of this FCC is politics over policy. I wish that was reversed, that the commissioners and the bureaus would focus more on looking at what good policy is, rather than get involved in what the politics is.
John.
To me, there's a root cause of so many of the issues, and that is a lack of appreciation and value of competition. I think if I were king for a day at the FCC, I would want to change that. We've been through, I think, 7 or 8 years of just this erosion of appreciation of the value of competition. You see it in terms of USF policy.
Yeah.
We don't want to fund competitive networks. That perspective that it's about the dollars and the maximum efficiency of the dollars, and that somehow, both on the dollar side and on the public interest side, the best approach is to basically gut the system from wireless is ridiculous. And I think the root cause of it is contrary to what I think the Telecom Act of '96 is about, that somehow competition now is a dirty word, and that's not driving policy.
Right.
Yeah, we got to get the lower roaming rates. That'd be the first thing. We pushed to drive those. But I think more important, the USF, I think the ability to get wireless more involved in building out these regional rural markets, I think, are critical, and wireless should play a role in that.
Anything additional?
That's a good question. If I were king for a day, I would shut down Leger one day. No, I'm kidding. I'll take that back. No, if I were king for a day, there's one thing that I don't like about this industry, having been here for seven months. I would clean up the advertising. I would clean up the misleading advertising, and I would force carriers to basically disclose to consumers what does it cost to have the cost of a cell phone combined with the cost of service. I mean, today when you see the ads, it's a free phone, but it's really not free, or it's just a mess. And I would actually force all of us to basically be open and transparent with consumers and let them know this is how much you're going to pay for your mobile phone, this is going to be your monthly service, and this is what's going to be included. And I think that would clean up, because right now, if you ask consumers if they know what they're paying for the cell phone, it's a mess. And I think that's something that it was kind of shocking coming in, all the tricks that everybody plays to try to get consumers.
We're almost out of time, but I had one other question that sort of struck me last week, 2 weeks ago at the World Mobile Congress in Barcelona. John Chambers, the CEO of Cisco, said, and I quote, that 50% of all carriers will be irrelevant in 10 years. And that sort of struck me as, I don't know if that's coming from somebody that really understands, the deployment of the wireless industry or not. But hey, he's Mr. Cisco. So, what's the future of our business? What's your opinion, and are you optimistic about our opportunities moving forward?
I think the future is bright. We just got to make the right investment. I think there's a lot that's going to happen. Hopefully there will be more consolidation in the future, in which carriers are going to be able to get more scale. I disagree with John. I think some carriers will be out of business if all we transform ourselves is into a dumb utility pipe. I think we have to get in the business of understanding content, being able to differentiate ourselves among our competitors, being able to, we have a direct link to our customers for a device that they're watching 90% of the time they're awake, and we have to learn how to monetize. We have to learn how to monetize data. So there's just so much opportunity. Think about it, we're in the middle, and we provide them the most important device they carry every single day. So we got to be capable of figuring out how do we continue to monetize that.
Ron.
I totally agree with Marcelo, except my concern is that all those opportunities I view, and I was, as you were going through them, I can name blocking of content, the monetization, you go back to paid prioritization, all these issues are exactly what we as the mobile industry should be doing. But I think under Title II, if you really look at it, we've got some really concerns. And so I view it's very positive. You're right. We should be able to monetize for the consumer's benefit to the point where the consumer doesn't even have to pay for a bill because of what they're doing on the phone. But I don't think you can get that through Title II.
Rodney?
Yeah, operators have to build 4G networks, and they have to be prepared to invest in 5G. If not, they'll go out of business because it's been proven in the past.
Thanks. Jonathan, last word?
I am optimistic. I think, no doubt it's a tougher business than it used to be. There was a time where penetration was low and we were all growing like crazy, and it was a lot easier than it is today. You've got to be a good business person with a good business plan, and the funding and the regulatory construct. A lot of things have to work, but that doesn't make it a bad business. It's a terrifically dynamic, exciting business that's going places. And to the point about John Chambers, I guess I can understand from where he sits, what he sees, where's 99% of his revenue come from. But he should come to this conference and see
It's a great idea.
That's right.
They should join.
Maybe next year.
We're a little over, but listen, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know if you did, but I think we. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
I'll see you later.
Appreciate it. Oh, very good. Oh, we'll move on and thank our panelists. Oh man, I tell you that really engaging discussion. And I know it's going to be tough for the next keynote speaker to follow. That was